right, and we're back working on the Jose 50-watt head. As always, brought to you by 3Monkey Solderless, home of the world's best cables for your pedal board. Check us out at 3monkeysolderless.com. All right, so where we left off last is we have the power section, right? The power transformer is wired in. We checked it, it's all working good. We have the octal sockets kind of wired up a bit. We have our filter capacitor network for the high volts wired in. We have our screen supply wired in. Where I would usually go at this point, we also got our secondary and our output transformer, our primary on the output transformer, and we have our fuses. The HT is half done. We got the mains fuse completely done. So where I would go right now is to start putting in the pots and the input jacks, the switching jacks. And from there, we'd move on to dropping in the board and wiring up the amp and finishing it up and finally doing the shielded wire. So we'll probably do the pots right now. And we need one particular potentiometer that's sort of like the heart and soul of the amplifier in a way. And that's this dual potentiometer with a push-pull, right? Double pull, double throw. So it has two elements on it, right? So two potentiometers sort of stacked on top of another, and then a double pull, double throw switch activated with a push-pull. So we're gonna need to build that, and that is the Jose sort of dual master volume. So we're gonna get the chassis out of the way, and we're gonna go ahead and start building this master volume. So we start with a tag strip that we're gonna mount on this unit. We have a tag strip, we have a capacitor, right? Coupling capacitor, we have our Zener diodes, and we have a resistor. So these are the parts that you would need in some wire, right? Some smaller gauge wire, and these are the parts we would need, or we do need to build this particular master volume circuit. So we start by prepping this guy, right? A little tag strip. So I cut off the tags here with my pair of fret nippers, and there it is. Okay, and then we're going to trim it down to size. Okay, so this is what we need right here, is basically the unit that we can build this out. So I'm going to take my 10K here. We're going to put it in right here. And then we're going to take this 0.22 capacitor and get it like there. And we can go ahead now and solder all this together. Sit. There we go. Get back in there. Okay. Trim our leads off. We're going to leave these two open because we're going to need to put some cables there. Now we can tin the attachment point here. Now we can get our potentiometer. We can tin here. And when you tin the potentiometer, first of all, make sure that it's pushed in on these guys, because you can melt the element inside if it's in the wrong position. And get in and get out fairly quickly. Try not to keep too much heat on this thing for too long. Now we're going to just sort of solder the two together. There we go. And there we have the beginnings of it. Now we're going to need to mount this in something to make it a little easier to work on. So I have a little piece of phenolic board here. Just going to screw it on. And I'm going to mount this all in my vise here to do the work. Now I'm grabbing a wrench real quick. To go ahead and tighten this nut down on. Okay. I'm going to secure the assembly in the vise here. And that allows me to work on it, right, easily. So we still have our diodes to work with. All right, so now let's just start wiring this thing together. So the Jose Master is unique. Maybe talk about that a little bit while building it, in that it's a dual master volume, right? So it's a selectable master volume along with a diode clipper. So, so the way it works is in one position, it's a standard sort of master volume, which is the in position, right? So this would be considered a pre-phase inverter master volume. It puts the potentiometer in series with the output of the treble pot and the input of the phase inverter. So what that does is just basically the same thing as any pre-phase inverter master volume would. It just has a voltage divider on the output of the tone stack going into the phase inverter. So very standard. Where Jose differed in all of this is that when it's pulled out, it breaks the connection. The pot breaks the connection between the cathode follower, right, which is the tube stage. Well, cathode follower is a type of tube configuration, right, which is a low impedance sort of tube configuration using two triodes of a tube. And what it does, what the master volume does when you pull out the switch here, is it breaks the connection between that tube and the components of the tone stack, being the 470 puff, the slope resistor, and the two capacitors that are used connecting to the treble pot as well as the mid pot, the 0.022s rather. And that will give you a variable signal heading to those, or a voltage divider in series with those, which is another kind of master volume. Now the interesting thing about that is it has the effect of almost acting like a slope in a way too. So it tends to give the amplifier at lower volumes a more cranked up feel when it's pulled out. The volume of the amplifier drops down more so than it would with the normal mode master volume, right? So there's always a master volume working in a Jose design, a standard one, and then his design in the cathode follower area. This will be more for your lower volume settings. It kind of sounds a little fatter, and that would be more for like your standard operation. Now, in terms of the diodes, they are always in the circuit, always. They don't switch in or out. Now, granted, the kinds of diodes that Jose used varied over the years, and there were different types that he would use. He would go so far as to using, even like MOSFETs, JFETs, to do to act as diodes for the clipping, different kinds of diodes. But this particular diode setup was what was in my Jose, and I have a kind of I kind of like it. I think it's kind of a cool design. Now, somewhere around here, I had some heat shrink tubing that I was going to use. Where did I put it? I don't know if I threw it out. I'll listen to some violin while I'm looking for the heat shrink. Here it is. Had it right there the whole time. All right, so I'm generally not going to reveal what the type of diode is. I have to keep some things to myself, right? Because I try to give as much as I can without damaging myself. All right, so I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna heat shrink it. So let me grab my heat gun. You can use all kinds of diodes. Zeners, silicons, germanium, JFETs, MOSFETs. You can pretty much use whatever you like. And you'll still have a pretty good sound. Okay, so now we're going to continue on building this master volume. That was not correct. There we go. It kind of disturbed that joint before it cooled, and you could see how it kind of fractured there, which is not what you want. Right? You end up with a very poor solder, a cold solder. So I'm going to get that in. Just going to give this a quick touch up. I just didn't like it. It still looked a little less shiny than I like. So that's good right now. Actually, I just need to do this one. Fan. Always forget to put the fan on. There we go. All right, let's continue on. Do the ground connection. Solder's arriving soon, I believe today. So we will not run out of solder in this project, which is good because I hate running out of things. I mean, the price of solder has gone bananas, I have to say. So that's kind of a real bummer. I mean, I would say the price of solder has more than doubled in the recent years. So we're going to ground this. On the back here of the assembly and tuck our ground lead down. There we go. Let's continue on. This music is making me want to rush. So all this is that I'm doing on this side of the double pole is to switch out which master is going to be used. Well, it's a partial of the switching of it. Both sides are used to determine that. So this will either short this potentiometer, rendering it the top deck, rendering it inoperable with just a simple ground reference, or it will sever the connection between the cathode follower and its associated capacitor, resistor, and capacitor network feeding the tone stack. All right, so I think we obviously covered that, but I just thought I'd elaborate maybe. I don't know. Old shaky hands as I get older. That looks good. And then this is going to go over to the treble potentiometer, so I'm going to trim off some lead. And then the rest of these this side will go over to the phase inverter input capacitor. So there we go. I have to keep that held down so it doesn't slide out of my control. There we go. There we have it. So there is our finished Ossie Master volume assembly. So we can put this away. And I think we have time right now to get our potentiometers in. So we'll put the chassis back on the bench. All right, get it all going. So I'm gonna get my potentiometers out. Get those all ready. All right, so here we have them. Just gonna go through and check that I've got everything I need. I don't need that. It's a 5K. 250. 1 meg, 1 meg, 25. Okay. All right, so we'll start loading these guys into the chassis. Get some lock washers. Like I said, I like to use these really aggressive lock washers for my builds because they really have a good tooth on them that helps you dig into the chassis and make a really good ground connection. So we could start with just putting in the Ossie. assembly. Load our lock washer in there. All right, get this stuff, move it back. Put our nut on. I'm just gonna go finger tight until I get all my pots lined in. Now before I put in it, right, so we've got, this is gonna be the master, then we're gonna have the bass, the middle, the treble, and your 2 gains. So before I solder or rather put these things in, I wanna put a little bit of solder on the back of the pots for our bus wire. So I'm gonna take off the hardware of all of them, right? And kind of reserve the hardware here, put it on this unused, put it on this roll. Let me see if that's in camera. Yeah, it is. And just take my soldering iron and put a dollop like that right in the middle. And that's sort of what I want there. All right, so we can put that there. Base, we got the middle. The middle's a 25K. Just gonna get these less than desirable lock washers out of the way. And the tab to the side, get it on there. Get our solder on there. Treble pot 250. Tab out of the way. And then our 2 preamps. It's actually another preamp over there, which we will get to, but probably not right now. So I'm gonna have to make sure that this is all gets done before we go into doing the switching pots and then the added gain pot, which is a push-pull too. Okay, there we go. So now I can just put this aside, move the chassis a little closer to me. Verify the pot, 1 meg base. Insert it. Start the thread. Verify the pot, 25K middle, lock washer. Get it through. Get the hardware on. There we go. Verify the pot, 250K. Yep, that's our treble. Lock washer. Hardware. One meg. One meg. Get this out of the way. Actually, before I put that 1 meg in, what I want to do is open up the hole for the switch. Right, because it's going to make a little bit of a mess in terms of putting some plastic in the chassis. So I really don't want it to get in the pot. So there we go. Go ahead and vacuum this out. So that's where our little mini toggle goes for the jump switch. All right, put this preamp potentiometer in there. Tighten her down. All right, now we could go ahead and we'll get these all kind of where we want them. Looks good. Now we can just send them home. Get them nice and tight. There we go. All right, so we can also wind around the back here and around the front here. All right, so those are our, this one needs to go around. Got caught on that tab rather. There we go. So this keeps them out of the way, right? Keeps our two leads out of the way of any signal, stows them nicely, right? And then we can run our bus wire across everything. So I'm gonna grab that, grab some bus wire. Straighten it out. And then we could just solder it to the back of these potentiometers here. There we go. And then we just kind of work across. We tin it a little bit, and then we can solder it in place. Gonna have to go lefty. There we go. All right, so we got the bus wire in place. This will provide the ground bus for all the preamps. Got a little piece of solder here. Let me get that out of there. There we go. Let me give this a little bit more of a tin. Okay. There we go. So that looks really good there. All right, so I think that's probably good for this stage right now. Next, we're gonna have to put in the switching jacks for the inputs. I think that would be a good video all on its own. I think we covered a lot here with the master volume and putting in the pots and things. So I think that'll be it for this issue, for this installment. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.